Teferi. Probably up to 9 cards now. Land will make it so there's 8, and he may have to discard a card once again.
Yeah, plenty of dead removal to pitch, though. Discards aren't impactful here.
This will be a Nexus of Fate on the end step, looking to get some action generated here. Now, this is a pretty good syncopate target if you can get it, because it would exile it instead of just placing it into the graveyard, which means it would go back into the deck.
Yeah, well, Cowden's got to decide how much he really cares about this. All this extra turn represents on the surface here is an extra spin of Escanta the Sunken Ruin. There's really nothing else going on. But that might be enough to warrant a syncopate. I mean, he's got to spend his mana on something at some point. The syncopate's shelf life may not last forever, so I don't mind taking this opportunity to do something. Yeah, and Cowden was also floating 2 there off the Teferi trigger, so casting that Absorb only cost 1. If you're discarding a hand size anyway, the extra activation of Escanta that Newman would get out of an extra turn is meaningful. So I don't mind picking a spot there, even though that's a more innocuous Nexus of Fate than most.
Carter Newman, a name you may be familiar with, pardon me, for some of his accomplishments on the SCG Tour and Grand Prix circuit, but also a Gamers Helping Gamers recipient of a scholarship.
Awesome.
In 2018-2019, along with Clay Spickelmeyer. That'll be a Hallowed Fountain untapped for Carter. And now this will be a Wilderness Reclamation, so trying to resolve the scary spell from Ravnica Allegiance.
So the question here now is, do you fight over this if you're planning on making a Teferi emblem and then casting something? You might just get it for free. I think from Cowden's perspective, if you get out of this turn without too much damage being done, it's really hard to imagine losing. And also, all the extra mana, all the extra untapping, the extra turns, they do add as Escanta activations, which Cowden does have to be mindful of.
Absolutely.
So even though these cards look kind of innocuous, why does Newman need more mana? He doesn't have anything to do with an extra turn, et cetera, et cetera. Escanta does change the calculation a little bit.
Well, we've got a Teferi emblem on the way here for Nick. Now it's about trying to draw some cards, and what better way to do it than the Planeswalker that made the emblem. Looks like another Teferi might be on the way, and the first target for that will absolutely be the Escanta.
Yeah, shut that down, cut off Newman's extra cards, and then winning from there should be not that hard, even if Newman is able to resolve Wilderness Reclamation.
Nick will play Hallowed Fountain untapped. He'll untap a couple of lands, syncopate at the ready, and simply pass the turn back over to Carter Newman. Carter's going to untap all of his lands, but he's without his Escanta now, and just doesn't really have a real base here. He could cast Nexus of Fate, and Nick might be totally fine with just letting this resolve, but it looks like he's going to syncopate, and Carter says, we are all done here as I cannot overcome this Teferi emblem and all that counter magic. So Nick Cowden's going to win game number 1 here over Carter Newman with a smile on his face. Esper Control quickly up a game here over Banton Nexus. Cowden looking to improve to 12-1 and lock up a seat in the top 8 pretty early here. Go to the sideboards. Carter's got some things to work with, however, in 4 copies of Negate, 4 Knight of Autumn, 3 Hydroid Crassus, 2 Lyra Dawnbringer, and 2 Crushing Canopy. I think the Negates are pretty obvious there, partner.
Well, the Negates, I like the Hydroid Crassus too, and it's possible that Newman will want to bring in the Knight of Autumns, one, to maybe try to change the game plan a little bit and apply some pressure, hoping that Cowden's cut a lot of his removal, and also to get himself some more answers to search for Escanta as well. Really meaningful card in the matchup.
Other side of things here for Nick, he's got 3 copies of Thought Eraser, 3 Thief of Sanity, 3 Moment of Craving, 2 Lyra Dawnbringer, Akaya's Wrath, a Cry of the Carnarium, a Disdainful Stroke, and a Negate.
I really like the Thought Erasers and the Thieves of Sanity. Carter doesn't have a lot of creature removal to begin with. Thief of Sanity is a little volatile in the matchup. It's not like you're going to hit a steady stream of easy-to-use cards, but post-board there should be enough in the way of negates and card-drawing spells for Thief of Sanity to leverage a pretty big advantage. And I like Thought Erasure in the matchup, too. Newman's got a lot of high-impact cards and a lot of air, so Duresses are good. The extra negate, the extra Disdainful Stroke. There's a lot of creature removal that Cowden can cut out. I don't think he wants to get away from all of it because these Bant Nexus decks typically sideboard into some number of creatures, but you can shave out a fair bit and make room for this stuff and still not leave yourself completely exposed to opposing creatures.
Well, that gives you an idea of what both players are working with here in the sideboard. So a pretty easy win there for Nick Cowden. We'll see if Carter can make things a little bit more difficult for our Esper Control player, who's almost locked up a top 8 berth here in Indianapolis. Speaking of that schedule here on the SCG Tour, we'll take a look at where we've been and where we're going. Columbus is where we kick things off with our record-breaking Team Modern Open. Then we went to Worcester a couple weeks ago where Dom Harvey hoisted the title with his take on Amulet Titan. Nick Cowden might win this tournament here in Indianapolis for Ravnica Allegiance release weekend. And the next weekend we'll have a fun Team Constructed Open in Baltimore.
Well, after Baltimore, Dallas, that brings us to March. Syracuse is the Legacy Open. The regional championships, you can head over to go.starscggames.com/regionals for more information. We've posted all of the sites for that tournament, so check it out. Find the regional championship closest to you. After that, Modern in Philadelphia. Cincinnati will be a Team Constructed Open. One show in April, but we make it count. The land.
You better believe it.
Ohio.
You better believe it.
It's Modern. That brings us to May. That gets you a Standard Open in Richmond, a Standard Open in Syracuse, and a Modern Open in Louisville. And that will bring us to the Season 1 Invitational SCGCon, Berglund Center, Roanoke, Virginia, June 7th through the 9th.
Play mats aplenty, folks. We'll go over them real quick as we always do for our Standard Open and Classic players. You'll get the Botanical Growth playmat made by Victor Adame Minguez. For our Modern Open and Classic players, Star Crown Angel by Greg Staples. And for our Legacy Open and Classic players, Loftstone Citadel by Adam Pawcat. Do keep in mind that all these playmats made specifically for this purpose. These are not Magic cards. These are playmats made by these fantastic artists specifically for you and the SCG Tour. They're free and exclusive playmats with entry into an Open, a Classic, an Infinite Challenge, or a sealed spectacular package. Go.starcitygames.com/schedule for more information. As we get ready here for game number 2 between Nick Cowden and Carter Newman, Esper Control, Bant Nexus. Bant Nexus, of course, a popular deck here this weekend. 5 copies in day number 2 of competition. Esper Control, also 5 copies in day number 2 of competition. And if Nick is able to win this game, that'll bring his record up to 12-1 and pretty much solidifying himself into the top 8.
Yeah, should be essentially a lock at that point, especially with us having a lighter day too in terms of number of players. Usually makes it a bit more forgiving on the record.
Both players taking a look at the top couple of cards of their deck. Nick already happy to keep. Carter also has kept, and we are underway. Nick looks comfortable. I would be too. His deck looks to be pretty good for the weekend and certainly good for the matchup, as he'll play a Watery Grave tap and pass the turn back over to Carter, who has a couple copies of Hinterland Harbor to get things started. Thought Eraser the draw, as there is a Godless Shrine untapped. And there is a Thought Eraser. So we see Carter Newman's hand. Nick will get the pen and paper ready.
That is a brutal set of duels to open with this hand really resting on Search for Escanta, and I believe will be Cowden's selection with this Thought Erasure.
Yeah, it seems like the best card to take here. You see the hand of Teferi, Wilderness Reclamation, Chemister's Insight among those cards. But as you mentioned, Patrick, that Search for Escanta's got to go away, and it does. Nexus of Fate is the draw, and this one might be over before it even begins. The Search for Escanta was the draw here for Nick.
Busted.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about 2 being the industry standard of this card.
Well,
I understand the second copy. The second copy is not good, right?
It's legendary.
Do you ever lose when you have this on turn 2?
It strikes me as rare.
It's really rare, right?
Strikes me as rare. Don't think you can play 4, but 3 feels kind of right.
Well, it's legendary, and people still play 2. And what that says to me is you're willing to risk drawing the second copy because it's so good when you have the first one. That suggests to me that it's possible that the right number is greater than 2. Just a thing to think about. Maybe it's just supposed to be 2, maybe, but every single time someone has it and the other person doesn't, it's like, what are we even doing? What are we doing?
Chemister's Insight was played, and then it was expanded upon by Carter so that he could draw a couple of cards. Now here's a Thief of Hope with some counter magic at the ready, and Thief of Hope, much like Search for Escanta, can run this game over all by itself. Thief of Sanity. Hydroid Crassus is going to come down as a 2/2, gain a life, draw a card. And it'll actually get syncopated because Thief of Sanity would like to get insane and start taking some cards.
And also, the shelf life on Syncopate isn't unlimited, so little bit of that too.
There's the Thief.
I feel like these Banned Nexus people got to come up with a different plan in matchups like this, because you see the Nexus of Fate that Newman has. These cards only do something when things are already going well. And from the Esper control side, we've seen a little bit with the Sultai decks too. The whole game plan is to make sure you never get off the ground, to be able to fight over your enchantments, to be able to counter enough stuff. Too many of Newman's resources already sort of presuppose the game is taking a certain shape.
Well, like, I'm just going to say it. I think their sideboards are horrible.
These are horrible sideboards.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the player.
Horrible sideboards.
It's nothing to do with any of the players. It's just the way that this deck is constructed. These sideboards are horrible because they don't solve the problems that people are bringing to the table in games 2 and games 3.
Right.
They just don't. And we've seen it so many times here this weekend where, what does this deck do about Thief of Sanity? Seriously, what is Carter supposed to do?
Right. Yep. At least Todd Anderson is playing with, like, shocks and...
Murmuring Mystic and Mizzet and Crushing Canopy, like things that solve problems after sideboard. Like Hydroid Crassus, even if resolved, who cares?
Right.
Okay.
Right. It doesn't really represent a fundamentally different game plan.
Here's a Thought Eraser. You're going to see various Nexuses and Negates and card drawing spells, and Thief of Sanity doesn't care about any of those things. This is going to be the biggest adaptation for this deck, is how do they change after sideboard?
Yep.
Nexus of Fate is obviously integral to taking all of the turns to the game, but that, I don't want to say it's win more because it's an important piece to winning the game, but there are too many situations where it is just horrible.
Yeah.
Even though it is powerful.
Yeah, you could talk me into, I feel like the sideboard plan maybe is supposed to be more about, I don't know how much more of this you can really do, but search for Azcanta. If you put that on the battlefield, then you have a lot of time, and your negates and so forth get a lot better.
It's kind of one like, so I don't know if there's a good Planeswalker to play.
Right. Yeah. Something,
you know?
But something. The thing is, I think it needs to be cheap. There's so much good counter spells and good disruption that I don't think a 4 or 5 mana spell. Sometimes it'll work, but I think it's hard to do it that way.
Yeah, like I don't know if Dovin is powerful enough to bring in from the sideboard, especially because you're not able to really cast it ahead of schedule. Maybe you're supposed to sideboard into Carnage Tyrants. I'm not sure, but this configuration at this stage just isn't working. As you see, Nick is just dominating this game after sideboard.
Right.
It's not even particularly close.
Not competitive. Although some of that had to do with Newman's opening of 2-tap duels and then missed their 3rd land drop. If Newman can play his Search for Azcanta on the 2nd turn, maybe this looks a little bit different.
Maybe it looks a little bit different, but I still think that the Thief is a problem.
Oh, no question. It also suggests to me that you may want to have
You lose your train of thought?
This is not good for Newman.
Okay. Well, turn on the clown music, because we're done here. Nick Cowden going to win this game and match over Carter Newman.
Oh, man.
100 games to 0 as far as I'm concerned. He's 12-1. I think he's a lock for top 8. And that was the old beatdown.
I mean, Thief of Sanity might be good in the mirror. That might be a thing to think about.
Yeah.
I don't know